How much money do you make? That is on the list of the most
Yeah.
inappropriate questions that you could ever ask someone. It falls somewhere after how much do you weigh and
Yes.
somewhere before why don't you drink alcohol. My next guest is a social media influencer. He talks about salaries all the time. Piyush Monga is the creator of Salary Scale. He's got what 440,000 followers on Instagram, another
Right.
100,000 on TikTok. So he is out there
Right.
in the world, and he
Thank you.
joins us now to talk about asking this question why and how he gets people to talk. Piyush, hello.
Hey, Bruce. Thank you so much for having me. It's definitely a pleasure being here. And just to give it back, I think why I started is because I wanted to create a lot of salary transparency, work culture transparency. I do understand it's one of the toughest questions to ask in person. And I was thinking, what if a stranger, as a third person, could ask on behalf of a lot of people? And I feel that a lot of people still find it relatable. So here we are.
You've been in Canada for about 3 years. Did you have
Yes.
the advantage of not having cultural baggage about this question that someone who'd grown up here all their life had? Or did you have the same baggage that we all have, knowing that this is a horrendous, horrible, invasive question?
For sure. So I think how I would put it is I come from a culture where it's definitely not acceptable to ask someone, amongst other questions like what's your age or even how much money do you make in that case.
Yeah.
It's definitely offensive and it's unacceptable. But at the same point of time, on a personal level, I think I lack a lot of inhibitions. And
Right.
even, when I catch up with friends, there are a lot of things that I unfortunately don't think twice before saying. And so this is like an extension of my personality,
Right. So this is
unfortunately.
on brand for you. Your
Oh,
friends are
yeah.
like, yeah, that's totally how he rolls. Okay. So you have this
Yes.
idea. And by the way, I totally agree with the idea. I think this is something that's super helpful for people.
Sure.
What
Thank
was
you.
the very first conversation you had? You like got the camera rolling and you took a deep breath and you said, I'm going to ask this question. Who
Yes.
was it and how did it go?
Oh yeah, so I think the first question that I ever asked was this girl, and she's probably 17, 19, and I wasn't even sure if she has a job at the moment, and I don't want to like put someone off who's probably looking for opportunities, doesn't have any, or is just chilling in life. But then I just walked up to her, and her mother was right next, and I asked them like, "Hey, this is slightly personal. If I would be you, I would definitely not answer this question, but I have a question for you." And they said, "Shoot anyway." And then I shared the question, and then they said, "Okay, but I think we would answer it." I said, "But
Mhm.
I might answer it, but I would definitely not answer it on the camera, and there is also a cameraman right here. Do
Yeah.
you still want to answer that?" And then they said, "Yeah, of course, we want to do it." I said,
Wow.
"Okay, let's go."
What are some things? How many of these conversations have you had, ballpark?
So recorded would be 600 and rejections
Six.
would be upwards of 3,000.
Wow. 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 Okay. So the 600 conversations that you had, what are
Yes.
some of the themes that have emerged? So obviously there's like specific numbers and people,
Yes.
gave you answers, but what are some of the other things that you have learned from having
Yes.
600 of these conversations?
So first of all, a lot of people find it pretty offensive to, being asked, like, forget answering, like, for them to be asked, like, if asked such a question, they find it offensive. But what I've also seen is there are some patterns about humans and how they think. Like, a lot of people have, like, this, they've already decided that they would never ever answer this question. And when we kick off that interview in the heat of the moment, if I just push them a bit, hey, can you like give me a range? Is it like 70 to 90? And then they would say, oh yeah, it is in that range of 70,000 to 90,000. And then the moment I say, oh, now that I'm making 90, so they say, oh no, it's a little less. And before they realize, they've actually given up their salary.
Right.
Uh, so that is
These
one.
are some good journalistic interviewing skills you've developed over time.
No, I think it's also about humans that I feel that on a subconscious level, they've made a decision, but at the heat of the moment, they sort of forget that they had this decision and they had to live up to it. So this is something that I think I just came
Hmm.
across uh, out of experience.
Mm.
Apart from that, I think a lot of people also like to talk about their bosses for the most part, which we don't put up. It's not a nice thing to put up, but one of our interviewees, they were caught in a bit of a challenge because their boss, because the views on that video were like 8 million, and the boss and the boss's colleagues, like everyone above and below in the organization, ended up watching that video. So yeah, it sort of blew
Whoa.
up.
Wow. What context do you
Yes,
include in that conversation? So there's the number, obviously. If someone
yes,
is a server in a restaurant, that's one
right,
thing. If
right,
someone is a software engineer at a huge tech company, it's another
yes,
thing. So how do you
yes.
paint a broader picture that includes more than just the number?
If you could rephrase that question, I'm sort of
Yeah.
getting it, but I just
So
want to confirm.
as you're talking to people, they'll give you their number, but in order to
Yes,
make sense of the number,
yes, yes,
it's
yes,
helpful to understand what they do for a living. Like if someone says
yes,
I make
yeah, yeah,
90 grand, well
yes,
that's maybe not so much if it's a software engineer, it's a
yes,
ton if they're a server in a restaurant.
yes, yes, for sure. And exactly what happened with one of the servers. So we've actually interviewed a few servers who were probably making under $1,000 on a monthly basis in Toronto. And then I also went on to interview a lady. She's making as much as six figures as a server in Toronto. And the moment it went live, everyone goes like, "Bro, she's lying through her teeth," like blah blah blah. They were just a little cooked, if I could say in the Gen Z language.
See, like cooking the books,
Yes, yes,
cheating. Got it.
that's
Okay.
right.
Right.
So, so they found it challenging, and then we found this lady again. So we had to, look for her, and we did that interview, and we actually realized most of amount of money that she's making as a server is through tips. She like there were some days that she was also getting tipped as much as 800, $900, which is I
Wow.
think insane. But these are also
What do you want listeners, viewers to take
yes.
away from these conversations? So obviously there's this delightful scrolling thing of these very intimate and personal stories, but what do you want them to take away from watching that?
So there's a lot of learning that can take place, but before that, if in the name of humanity, if one suggestion that I could ever give, if you guys use social media, please uninstall all the apps. It's not good for you. It is, for the most part, it's not good for you unless you have like a timer set and you're not spending more than 20, 25 minutes on a single day. I mean, the best example is Elon Musk. The last time he was asked how much time do you spend on your cell phone, he said, "Hey, I spend more than an hour." And then the interviewer said, "I don't believe you," and asked for that cell phone, and it actually showed like 1 or 2 minutes in a single day that he's holding his, like, opening up his, switching on his cell phone. So I think that's a major takeaway. If I would be you, I would actually gain control over my senses and delete all these apps. But now that you are here, might as well find something to learn.
Okay. Okay. So people are on the apps for more than a minute or more than an hour. They
Yeah.
watch all these sorts of things. Do
Yes.
you hope that people are inspired by the stories that they hear and think, wait a second, he or she has a similar background to me. They're making 70K. I need to either
Yes.
find a new
Yes.
job or ask for a raise.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, that happens quite a bit. And interestingly, we also end up mentioning a lot of certifications that people may have pulled off. But I think one personal takeaway that I got from all this learning is it's a lot about whom you know rather than what you know
Say
to
more
crack
about
that
that.
sort of money. So
Say more about that. What do you mean by that?
I think it's pretty simple. If I am, let's put it this way, if I am a waiter, probably sitting in some remote location of Africa where there may not be extensive funding available, versus I'm probably a waiter to, let's say, Elon Musk himself, there's a good chance that I know someone in position of power and they may be able to help me achieve a better financial outcome for myself rather than somebody who doesn't necessarily have that sort of ability to change my life financially. So it's also a lot more about whom you know rather than what you know.
Yeah, network matters. And for newcomers
Yes,
to this country, it's an additional challenge because they wouldn't
yes,
have the
for sure,
network that someone who's been
for
here
sure.
for 20, 30, 40 years would have.
Yes.
Um, just before we go,
Yes.
What is one thing you have gleaned about ways to increase your salary? If you were to boil all that you've learned into one tip, a lot of people would
Yes.
really
Yes.
love to hear that tip.
Yeah, for sure. One of the best things that I think an individual can focus on amongst various options like learning this skill, taking up certifications, doing this, doing that. I think one thing that is tremendously valuable to any organization, especially in 2025 with the onset of AI, it is experience and legit skill set. There's nothing else that can replace that. And one of the things that a lot of our mentees, so we have an organization where we help people, you know, elevate themselves in their career, is getting those free projects for larger organizations and being part of them, because now you're also exposed to a lot of directors, a lot of CXOs, and learning what you could do to be there. So, you're an average of 5 persons that you hang out with, they say. So,
Yeah.
if you could somehow spend more time with them, even if it's an unpaid or a free internship, that's perfectly all right.
Really interesting stuff. Piyush, thank
Thank you
you
so
so
much.
much for joining us to
You're
talk
most welcome.
about salary scale and for
Thank you so
asking
much.
the question that very few
Truly
people are willing to
appreciate it.
ask.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Piyush Monga is the creator of Salary Scale. He goes around and asks people how much money they make. Scandalous. But you know what? They
It is.
answer him.